with the steroids, you might find that not only does your Achilles feel better, but so does everything else in your body. It was
Yeah.
like I'm working with a pain medicine doctor for back issues I have, and I had a sinus thing, and my doc put me on steroids. And then I reported back to my pain doc. I'm like, hey, these exercises and stretches, I've been feeling pretty good lately. And then we talked, and it dawned on me, oh, wait a minute, I've been taking steroids. That's why I felt good.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't the exercises, it was the steroids.
Well, thank you for the
So,
counsel. Appreciate it.
yeah, I mean, those are the basic things to do. So, and generally, when I have a runner who has a sore, Achilles, I generally sit them. I sit them down for 4 or 5 days and let that cool off.
Yeah.
Because, if you try to push stuff like that, then you're generally going to end up with a worse injury.
Ron, are we on to questions and Q&A
Sure.
problems yet? Have you started? Did I monopolize the first 5 minutes?
We're still 10 to 7, so we haven't even started yet. But if you have a question, go ahead and ask.
I have a new pair of AirPods 3, AirPod Pro 3,
The pros, okay.
the Pro 3s. It's the new one. And my wife's got a set and hers fit pretty good. She got the uh, testing to come down to a perfect fit. So you get a 0 and a 0.
Yeah,
And
I did that too.
none of the little pods get me above 75%.
Well, in that
Those
case,
little,
I'm going to say you have weird ears, Lyman.
well, I'm pretty sure I do. I had a pair of Bose and had a similar problem. Question is there any aftermarket or any other source for ear, the little foam, not foam, but the rubber bits that go on the
Yes,
pods
and
that
I'm trying to
fit
remember the
weird
name
ear
right
people?
now. I'm going to give you a name because it's blanking on me, and this is one that people love. They didn't really work great for me when I tried them. I mean, the AirPod Pros 3 worked great for me. In fact, I'm just right in that middle one. I found a perfect fit like your wife did. But the as far as it's not uncommon to experience what you're experiencing. I just have to find the one that is highly recommended. And
This is somebody who makes the buds for it, not the not the AirPods.
you can try, let's see, I gotta see, hold on. There's some different companies that are highly recommended, and I'm looking to see if they make stuff for the Pro 3s. Uh,
While Glenn is looking, I'll make the observation that I bought a set of actually foam inserts for the AirPods Pro 2 that were highly recommended, that seemed to work pretty well. Well, it looks like Glenn has found it. I honestly don't remember the name of that company that I bought it
these
from.
are the company is Comply, Comply. Lyman, look in the chat if you're not. Um, those come highly recommended. Um, and I'm trying to remember, John, maybe you remember in maybe a couple episodes ago on John, my mind's blanking. Podcasts we both like.
Drake Winkley.
Nope.
Oh,
Uh,
I know what you mean.
yeah. Okay. On there, our friend who joined us last year was talking about the ones that he uses.
Matt
And,
Geek Gab and Dave Hamilton.
yeah, Dave Hamilton was talking about ones that he uses, but I don't remember. Let's see. Just trying to do a search and see if I hit on anything that he talked about. No, I'm just getting all kinds of stupid stuff. And it might have been the Comply ones that he was talking about. Um, Let's see. When in doubt, let's try AI.
Well, I can go to compliance, start my search there. There's bound to be I can use them with 75%, doesn't have to be perfect fit. I'm comfortable. I've got the ears of a garden snail, so or the hearing of a garden snail.
Now, let me
If
say,
I get a 75% fit, I should be satisfied.
let me just say this. This is when we're talking about this kind of stuff, it is a very, very individualistic kind of thing. So, um, because over the years I've tried things that people recommend, and I'm like, oh, I think these suck, and other people are like, oh my god, these are the greatest thing ever,
Yeah.
because we are so, minutely anatomically different that so what may work for someone else may not work for you, or vice versa. So it really is a trial and error kind of thing. But the complies do come, highly rated and highly recommended.
Good place to start. Thank you, guys. Appreciate
Sure.
it.
Yeah. John, I keep thinking I should like get transcripts off their podcast, because I know there's things in there that I'm like I'd want to save and create a notes file with that stuff in there,
Absolutely.
because there's so many good little tips. In fact, I've thought it was kind of cool that there's been a few times where I've had stuff in my goodies, and then later on they've talked about a similar thing, talk about the same thing on their podcast. So I was like, all right.
Speaking of aside stuff, anybody see tidbits this week? John, you read them, don't you, usually?
I have not, no.
They made a comment about the demise of Mac user groups.
Oh yeah.
As the functionality of the groups 20 years ago was essential, because that's where you could get information, is only from other people.
Yeah.
Today, we go online here and refer each other to websites. So much of that information is out there, and people can go get it on their own, and there's less need to have interface with other users.
Yeah.
You
And
get
part
it
of this,
online from almost anywhere. Interesting
I think part of
observation.
this, the social aspect of it as well. I mean, many of us here have known each other for decades now. So it's almost like a little bit of a friend circle. And if you remember a year or two ago, we were really talking about how can we grow the group and get more people. And the problem is that, especially younger people, they're not interested in something like this. Like you said, they just want to get on YouTube and look at a quick video, or look something up and let AI tell them, and boom, they're done. They don't want to sit through a meeting.
Well, that's probably the
Katie's or yours? Or the old rabbit they, but now we got rid of.
no, this is probably the application for my driver's license renewal.
Oh.
Did we just get quiet?
No, we're just quiet.
Okay, I thought maybe I lost the sound.
That's all right, Steve. You just died.
I felt, I don't know if the word is humbled or whatever, but a gentleman I work with, who's my fellow trustee in our neighborhood, was over today, and he got his new Mac, and he's like, hey, could you help me out with a few things? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Because he's like, yeah, you don't really know this stuff. He had 3 questions, and I couldn't solve any of his problems. And I'm like, it's not that often that I'm really that stumped by it. And even looking stuff up, I couldn't figure it out.
Just a slight change in topic. Now, tonight, I thought I was done with this, but tonight my wife and I have to go to the H&R Block office and finish paying our taxes. So, and we have an appointment, well, this evening, so I need to leave I need to leave the meeting by no later than 8 o'clock.
Okay. You and your wife, the great procrastinators.
Yeah. So we're nowhere near as organized as Steve Maynard is, but few of us are.
Hey,
Here's
I got Steve beat. My father-in-law just does it for us.
There you go. Yeah.
Although I did say to my wife, since our father, I said, since your dad is like approaching 80, we probably need to start taking this over at some point. But
John, you get half a raffle ticket.
and I don't get excited anymore about tax returns because they're already spent generally.
Oh, we haven't had a refund in probably 10 years.
We're getting a nice one this year, but my wife reminded me that, we just bought a new mattress for the bed and we just bought this and we just bought that. So, that'll pay the credit card bill.
Yeah.
We got a huge refund.
What's that?
We got a huge refund.
Yeah, we had a nice one, but I tell my wife she makes way too much income on her investments. That hurts us every year.
Yeah, right. The terrible problem to have.
Well, my wife's dad he was in finance and investments, and he had her and her brother like investing money from the time they were teenagers. So
Good.
it's like when my son was born, I bought a life insurance policy. She's like, "Now my investments are way more than your life insurance policy." So
Can I ask a question?
sure.
Does anybody here have experience with sharing on Google Drive?
Yes.
So if somebody wants to share something to me and I need to use a Google account,
Yes.
and are they going to get to see I don't really hardly use the Google account and I don't really want to start receiving email on it. But if I participate in a share operation, whether somebody's sharing something to me or I'm sharing something to someone, are they going to get my Gmail address just because I'm involved with file sharing?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to because they can see who it's shared with. I mean, I mean, you can just tell them, "Hey, I don't use this address, so don't send things to me at that address."
Does everyone share see it?
Well, does everyone in the share see it? If they're sharing some content to multiple people, and and I'm one of them, and I provide my Gmail to participate in the share, do all the other people who can look at the same share get to see my Gmail?
I'll tell you what, that's a good question, and I'm going to look at one of my Google Drives, and I'm going to see if I can tell you the answer to that. What I can see that I'm trying to find something that's shared with me. Okay, here's one. Let's take a look at this.
So if it's shared to you and shared to other people, do those other people see your Gmail?
Well, what I'm doing is, okay, like I am looking on the share thing here of a spreadsheet that was shared with me, and I see the list of people shared there, and I see their emails.
Because you see all the emails of the people who have access to it.
Yes. Now,
I see.
you can also, though, well, all right, let me look at a different one. I'm trying to find one that is shared with me, but it's not people that I actually interact with. I mean, like people I'm not friends with. Hold on a second. Um, well, see, because it depends on how you share it, and I understand this. It may not make sense to you, but you can provide anyone with the link, and you can share with them that way. Because on this one, I'm seeing it. This is like it's a shared spreadsheet for my son's soccer team, and all I'm seeing is the person's email who shared it with the group. I'm not seeing anybody else's. So probably in the settings, you can set it so that they're only going to see yours if you are the generator of it and you're not seeing anybody else's.
So this is under the control of the person doing the sharing.
Probably, but I don't want to say for certain that's the case.
Where do you suggest I learn more?
I mean, Google's got a database of, things you can look up. I mean, just look up, questions about Google Drive sharing, and you can probably find some answers there. And Google also has a forum where you can ask a question on that.
Uh-huh. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well, Ron, it's 7:06, but we seem to have a very sparse crowd tonight.
Yep. Maybe it's like John, they put off their paying their taxes.
Well, my taxes are always usually done by early March, but I understand if you have to pay waiting, but not necessarily to do them. I don't want that stress.
Well, should we
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know
start
where
the
everybody
goodies?
I would say maybe they're enjoying the weather, but to me, this weather sucks. I was sweating my butt off at practice this afternoon. Hopefully, some more will trickle in. So, Ron, you want to start?
Yes. Are you waiting for me to do something?
Oh, usually you kind of start things. So, do you want me to go, or I was waiting for you?
You're our Ed Sullivan there, Ron.
Well, there's nothing much to say except that we're recording the video.
Okay, well, then I guess I'll just move into my goodies. Although I'm getting a Zoom warning. I don't know what it's wanting. Hold on. I don't know. Whatever. Allow. Okay. God, I keep getting these warnings. Okay, can you all see that a green screen?
Yep.
Okay. I had to get through, I got like 4 different warnings that I had to bypass here. I don't know why I kept getting all those. Kind of weird. All right, so here we go. Glenn's goodies for April 2026. So Apple claims, and I think it's interesting that, according to Apple, I should say, they say no iPhone in lockdown mode has ever been hacked. So they've had the lockdown mode now for 4 years, and they say that Apple says they haven't seen a case where somebody's device was hacked once you turn on this mode. So here's, I mean, the Apple spokesperson, as you can see her quote here, we're not aware of any successful mercenary spyware attacks against the lockdown mode enabled Apple device. So one of three things. Either Apple has created a really good process here in case, you've been hacked and you turn this on, or two, they're just not aware of cases because they haven't been reported to Apple, or three, they're just not telling the truth. So decide for yourself. But hopefully it is a pretty foolproof thing to use if you run into trouble and you need to do something about that. All right, so now for our depressing section. The first thing, have any of you guys heard of Dark Sword by any chance? A
I've
hacking
heard
tool?
it, but I have no
Okay.
idea what it is.
Well, then let me read a little bit of this to you guys. Last week, cybersecurity researchers uncovered a hacking campaign targeting iPhone users that use an advanced hacking tool called Dark Sword. Now someone has leaked a newer version of Dark Sword and published it on the code sharing site GitHub. Researchers are warning that this will allow any hacker to easily use the tools to target iPhone users running older versions of Apple's operating system have not yet updated to its latest iOS 26 software. This likely affects hundreds of millions of actively used iPhones and iPads, according to Apple's own data on out-of-date devices. The files uploaded to GitHub are uncomplicated, just HTML and JavaScript, he said, meaning anyone can copy and paste them and host them on a server in a couple of minutes to hours. The exploits will work out of the box. There is no iOS expertise required. So from what I've been reading about this, if you're running the latest updates on iOS 26, you probably don't have a problem with it. But if you're somebody who's still, say, running iOS 18, then you could be in danger. So, I would just say, usually Apple's on top of this stuff, try and run the latest and greatest, systems, because it's going to help you probably avoid this stuff. All right. More from our depressing news site. The your router is now a national security risk. So this is kind of interesting. The vast majority of wireless routers used in homes and many small businesses are now being banned from being imported in the US. The FCC ruled that routers manufactured outside the US pose unacceptable risks to the national security of the United States or the safety and security of United States persons. And so this ruling follows a report that thousands of routers sold by Asus have been infected with malware, turning the infected routers into a botnet. In addition to Asus, routers sold by Cisco, D-Link, and Linksys were also targeted by the botnets. And by the way, I put the definition here, if you don't know what a botnet is, it's a group of internet-connected devices, and basically they're running bots. They're running these together, and they can be used to perform denial of service attacks, stealing data, sending spam, all kinds of stuff. And so last year was announced that investigators at 3 U.S. government agencies, Commerce, Defense, and Justice, began a probe into TP-Link routers, which currently hold a 65% market share in the U.S. And so they're investigating, and they're saying that, these are dangerous, and they basically banned the sale of these in the US. So what does this mean for you guys, for all of us? Well, most routers in the US are affected by this ruling, and it makes it illegal to import nearly every router for home use. And this includes, by the way, routers provided by internet service providers. Now, the key here is that any unsold inventory that's in the US can be continued to be sold until they're gone. And any router currently in use can be used illegally. So it's not like the routers that we're all using are illegal. But
Actually, I saw an article about this topic, and it said that the models that have already been approved by the FCC continue to be sold here, but foreign routers that are a new model that they're coming out with will have to go through additional rigmarole to be able to be approved for sale in the US. So it's not like we're going to lose the ability to buy a new router, given that they're all made overseas. But it might be that we only get to buy the old models when new models come out, until the router makers jump through all the hoops demanded by our government.
Right. And it also might spur more manufacturers here in the United States possibly to pick up the slack if they see a way to make a profit off of it.
Sure.
I read none of the routers were manufactured in the US, and I think the requirement to sidestep all of the new government stuff is a router has to be both designed and made in the USA. Then it could be approved by the FCC under the older methods. Otherwise, the new models can have a hard time getting in this country.
Well, that was my point though, Terry, is that maybe that might spur companies in the US to make and manufacture routers, possibly. Um, and by the way, you might, if you're changing your internet service, you might, just contact the new ISP to see if you're getting your router from them, what it is that they have. That might help your decision on whether you want to go to that ISP or not. So anyway, just kind of an interesting thing to keep an eye on. I'm honestly not very worried about it. I don't necessarily think the router I'm running is going to, cause me grief. But that being said, I do agree, because I think a lot of the hardware that is manufactured overseas is probably, and just this is my opinion, probably riskier than we realize. So,
And I think it's probably more vulnerabilities and security flaws and not anything that these other countries are intentionally trying to do to spy on us. In other words, I don't think the router makers are deliberately trying to do bad.
well, I would say I would agree with you, unless we're talking about Chinese companies, because every Chinese company is beholden to their government. So I don't trust anything coming out of China.
Anyway, I use OpenWRT, open source firmware.
Nice.
All right.
In other words, I'm replacing the software in the router by something that's been validated by an open source community.
Right.
I'll look it up.
All right. Continuing with the depressing news here, Apple is confirming that ads are coming to Maps, which I think sucks. So it was interesting because they didn't really just come out and like make this real public, but so recently Apple announced something called Apple Business, and it's a suite of software tools for companies to manage devices and teams. And it was interesting because they had a little thing right in there that says, beginning this summer in the US and Canada, businesses will have a new way to be discovered by using Apple Business to create ads on Maps. Ads on Maps will appear when users search in Maps and can appear at the top of a user's search results based on relevance, as well as the top of a new suggested places experience in Maps, which will display recommendations based on what's trending nearby, the user's recent searches, and more. Ads will be clearly marked to ensure transparency for map users. From my experience with search engines, these things are never quite as transparent as they say they will be. And I think there are a lot of people who press on those things, not really realizing that it actually is an ad. Even in your search results, when you see it's marked ad right next to it, I think it's easy to click on that and not even like really see that kind of thing. So anyway, if you use Apple Maps, be ready. And RIP to the Mac Pro. You guys might have heard about this, but Apple announced that it's discontinuing the Mac Pro. And so if you're not familiar with the Mac Pro, and there's a little etching on the tombstone of one there, it was originally launched in 2006, and it was really designed to be the high-end desktop Mac for like serious professionals. And they haven't updated. Apple hasn't updated it since 2023, and that was when they added the M2 Ultra silicon chip. And the actual design, by the way, of the Mac Pro hasn't been updated since 2019. And I think the real problem with the Mac Pro is, again, they were trying to make it, some real high end model, and that's great, but hard to sell something that costs $7,000 as a starting point for the price. So if you're not getting businesses to buy it, then you're going to have a tough time. And really, part of the reason that the Mac Pro has been discontinued is it's obsolete. The Apple Silicon chips have been such an enormous hit and have done so well and are so powerful that a lot of the stuff that before you had to have a high-end machine to do, you can now do on whatever regular desktop or laptop you're using. And so like the Mac Studio is now considered the high-end desktop, and it's a heck of a lot cheaper than the Mac Pro ever was. So there's just really not a need for it anymore. I mean, Apple killed it off, or discontinued it, but Apple really killed it off just because the stuff that they produced on their own. It just happened. But fear not, because if you happen to have a Mac Pro that you're not using anymore, I have some great uses for you here with the Mac Pro that you might want to use. So, first one, anybody need a trash can? Because here is, I don't know if anybody remembers that design of Mac Pro, makes for a nice looking trash can. Or perhaps you need a nice little desk with drawers. Just put a couple of those together and there you go. You got some drawers you can use, extra drawer space. Or maybe you'd like a nice little bench, put it right next to the house there. Or maybe you need some seating inside. Look at those. Those make for some nice, looking places to sit. And finally, how about a nice little end table there? So see, the Mac Pro isn't completely obsolete. There are all kinds of things you can do with it. All right. So now we get rid of our news that is a bummer and a downer.
I was gonna say real quick, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I have a hard time turning loose of old Macintoshes. I've got a 2011 Mac Pro, and it was operating really until just a couple of years ago. It might still operate on one of the old systems,
Yeah. No.
And so that's 15 years old, and it was such a beautiful piece of equipment,
Sure.
big and strong and beautiful, and kind of hate to see it die like that, but I haven't used it for quite a while. I've replaced it with, the newer models. Even the Mac Mini is pretty powerful these days.
Here's the thing. You can sit with your MacBook Pro and you can do it with the new silicon chips. You can do so much that before you really needed a high-end machine like that to do. Now, you don't really need that because, like I said, the Apple silicon chips are so powerful.
Right.
And there, by the way, if you guys search out there is a whole community that does very creative things with old Macs. And I know I've shared it here before, where I turned my very first Mac, the SE SuperDrive that was from like 1989. I turned it into an aquarium, and I know I've shared that with you guys before, where you look in the little window and there's the aquarium in there with the fish. So yeah, there's some really creative stuff out there that people have done with old Macs. Speaking of old, Mac OS 10 officially turned a quarter of a century old on March 24th. So on one hand, it seems like it's been around a long time. I don't know what you guys think. It feels like it's been around a long time, but you know what? After 25 years, it's holding up pretty well. I mean, it's kind of funny to think that, Tahoe is of the same family system line as, good old, cheetah or mountain lion or snow leopard or whatever. So we're still, we've been stuck on 10 for 25 years. So, but yeah, quarter of a century old. All right. Apple just came out with a new interesting feature. And you can use Playlist Playground, that's what it's called, to build Apple Music playlists. And it's kind of interesting. And I don't know if you guys have heard of this or played with it yet, but it works basically in Apple Music. Playlist Playground works by creating a playlist from a prompt about, it can be your mood, your genre, or an activity or whatever, and it'll create a playlist with auto-generated title and track lists, and it'll follow whatever that is that you asked. And so here's a real little quick video that'll show you what this is.
Apple added such a cool feature in 26.4, and I am so excited to talk to you about it. The new feature is called Playlist Playground, and technically it is kind of built on Apple Intelligence, but not entirely. We'll come back to it. Essentially what this is a feature inside of the Apple Music app that allows you to use AI to generate playlists based on natural language prompts. So you can just tell it what kind of playlist you would want, and it will create one for you. It's doing this using both its knowledge of you and what you listen to in Apple Music, as well as Apple Music as a whole, like what's trending, what's popular, and what songs may go well together. It is crazy cool. Let me kind of show you more in detail how it works. Okay, let's take a look at this. Here's my iPhone updated to 26.4. The first thing you know, Apple is so excited about this. They put it into like the top pick section. Usually this is just recommended or just used for like music. And this time it's promoting an actual new feature. So you can go to it from here, but you can also go to your library, and we have a new little playlist button here at the top. Now this is like kind of your normal playlist generator. I can add a title and I can manually add songs, which is great. Or we can use the Playlist Playground, which is launching here in beta. So I can go ahead and choose from some of these ideas that Apple has kind of put in there, and those generate kind of new each time just for different suggestions, jumping off points. But let's go ahead and put one in, and I'm going to use the microphone. Okay, and let's search or generate a playlist based on that. Now, Playlist Playground is going to think, it's going to use my information as well as what's trending and all that kind of stuff in Apple Music and pull that to generate this. It gives you kind of a summary at the top of what it did, gave it a title. There are 25 songs, so it always says 25 songs in that first one. It's an hour, 20 minutes, and here is the playlist that it generated. But what's really cool here, you still have full control over this. I can change the order, I can remove songs, I can go backward and forward as I make more edits, but I can go in here and hit customize. I can add more songs, refresher, anything like that. But what I want to do is remove any songs that came out after 2020. So now there's 16 in here. Let's go back to this one. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that now. And let's see if it adds Blink-182 and 502s into the mix. That did take a minute, but it did add some upbeat tracks to this playlist by Blink-182 and some chill songs by the 502s for a happy vibe. And it brought the total count up to 25 again. You can see we got a few Blink songs in there, 502s, all that stuff. You can keep adding to it if you want to, but other than that, you can go ahead and just save this playlist, making changes, whatever else you want to do. And since it's just a normal playlist, you can still do whatever you would normally do with a playlist. I can add a collaborator to it. I can share the playlist. I can pin the playlist. I can download all the playlists, but that's it. This is so cool. I love being able just to create these based on just kind of what you're thinking. If there aren't ones that are already tailored to you, that are the generated ones, this is just an amazing feature. I'm going to use this so much. As I said at the beginning, this actually doesn't require an Apple Intelligence capable device. For example, this is my older iPad mini. It does not support Apple Intelligence, and yet I can use Playlist Playground right here inside of the Music app. It also works on Android. Other supported devices include iPhones as well as the Vision Pro. I think this feature is wicked cool. And on top of that, Apple's not getting rid of any of their curated playlists at all. So all of the professionally curated ones that I love are still going to be there. You can still create your own. You can modify these ones after. But for those times where you're like, I need a playlist, and you kind of just want to be able to give it specific instructions, like even all those customizations that I showed you. This is an amazing way to do that. It is so easy to use. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. What playlist have you created with?
Okay, so I've played around with it, and it's kind of cool. Like I was just sitting here one day, and I kind of thought of, oh, okay, what mood am I in? And I just told it what mood I was in, and it came up with songs to kind of match that mood. So like I said, you can approach it in any different ways you want to, but it's a cool feature. So if you're an Apple Music user, something worth checking out. All right. If you use Apple TV, 26.4 has a new feature called Genius Browse. And so this feature uses, it's what they call intelligent recommendations. And basically, Genius Browse it's providing recommendations for TV shows, TV shows or movies that you might want to watch. And what it'll do is it divides the content into different genres or themes. And what you can do is so if you're on your Apple TV home screen and you scroll down to the bottom, you'll find this Genius Browse here, what it looks like. So you can see the first one says good for movie buffs. The second one, it says upbeat workplace comedies. The third one, gripping crime dramas. So it's choosing a number of genres. And the suggestions from that and within there, they're based on what you watch. So the categories are dynamic, and like you're not going to see, like as I put here, you're not going to see a workplace comedies if all you watch is action and sci-fi. Okay, it knows what you like and what you don't watch. And then if you click on any of those categories, you're going to see a list of suggestions. So, I found a sci-fi one I picked here, and it gave me suggestions of sci-fi stuff I could watch. So, if you're maybe looking for different stuff to watch, you're just looking for something new, or maybe you don't know what's out there and you've got a genre or something that, sounds good to you. Like I said, scroll down on your home screen for tvOS. If you're in 26.4, by the way, it's only 26.4. You'll find this kind of down toward the bottom of the screen of your home screen, and then you can play around with this. So just an interesting idea to find some new content. I've played around and I found some things that, okay, I didn't know that was around, and whatever. All right. Next, I heard an interesting little report about the S Lady. And instead of just pulling from one model, ChatGPT, starting in iOS 27, she might actually be pulling from a number of different AI models, and you might be able to tell the S Lady which one you want. And so why is this cool? Well, as you guys have heard me talk about before here, to me, the AI models out there they have different strengths. I use different ones for different things, and I find they do a better job. So I like the idea that, like for instance, I like the way Claude writes. So if I want to do something writing, I might say, tell the S Lady to use Claude to write me whatever, and so I think that's kind of cool that it's hopefully going to give you a lot more flexibility than just always having to use ChatGPT.
Uh-huh.
And by the way, I decided I'm just doing a little experimentation. I decided to subscribe at a low level to one of the AI models, and I just started with ChatGPT. It's like $9.99 a month because I do some really heavy duty stuff with AI. Like I get into some serious conversations, and I found by subscribing, it lets me do that because the free models, you can hardly get anywhere. I spent a couple hours one night a few weeks ago with ChatGPT and I just wanted to see, this was just an experiment to see what it could do. And I said, okay, I want you to build me a spreadsheet, and I want to use this with my pole vaulters. And I want you in there to put down what their current personal records are. And then I want you to put, based on their height and based on their personal record and the pole they're using, and I'm going to give you this information, I want you to be able to tell me where their standards should be set in every different condition of wind. So in pole vault, you can move the standards, which the crossbar's on, up and back based on where your vaulter is going over the bar. Anyway, I won't bore you with this, but I went back and forth for 2 hours at ChatGPT, and I kept refining this. And I now have this interesting spreadsheet tool that I can actually access from my phone, and it'll tell me what to set up for any vaulter if I give it the wind conditions and a few things about that vaulter. And it's kind of a tool I could literally use at a track meet if I wanted to. So that was just one example. I find I get into these really big kind of experimental things with AI, and so it's kind of cool being able to do that, because with the free models, you're very limited as to how many queries you can make in a 24-hour period, and what you can do with it. But with the paid version, like I've uploaded some um, big like files. Like we just had our HOA meeting where I'm a trustee in our neighborhood, and I recorded the meeting that lasted a little over 2 hours. I uploaded that entire audio file and had ChatGPT give me, a nice summary of the meeting that was limited to 5 pages that people would actually want to read. And I did some cleaning up of it and taking away and adding a few things, but man, that saved me hours and hours of work. And so if you do have a subscription, you can do all kinds of cool stuff. So I know I kind of veered off the beaten path here with that, but just a little plug for that. So far I'm kind of glad that I'm paying for that subscription.
Glenn, are you saying that the free version wouldn't allow you to have had that audio file transcribed?
It wouldn't accept a file that big. It's too much data. And although it did say to me, this might go quicker if you just upload that in smaller chunks. But it basically, if you have the free version of the stuff, it's limiting the amount of data that you can upload. I think some of them will like limit the amount of images it will generate in a 24-hour period. I think like maybe 3 was for ChatGPT. You can only ask so many questions, so you are very limited. I mean, if you just want to do simple stuff, you're fine. But if you really want to get more in depth and really have it work with you to build stuff, then yeah, the paid model is definitely worth it. Like I said, it's not so exorbitantly expensive. I mean, like I said, I think it's like $9.95, $9.99, whatever a month for ChatGPT. And I'm just, well, you know what? If I use it a lot, then to me it's worth it. If I don't, then I'll stop the subscription.
Will you be trying some of these others as well?
See,
Will you be trying some of these others as well?
well, that was my thought. Oh, I'll try one. Yeah, can you hear me? Am I there? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. That was my original thing. Oh, let's try one for a month or two, and let's try a different one for a month or two. I've gone for a couple months now with ChatGPT, and so far I'm just kind of liking it. So right now I'm just kind of staying put. I might try a paid one somewhere else later just to experiment and see how I like them, and then see, if there's one I like more than the other. So yeah, I might experiment, but if I urge you guys, if you have stuff that you might want to work on, it might be worth it. All right. I don't know if you guys know this little hidden trick on the iPhone. I don't know. Do you guys know that you can use 2 fingers to select like multiple stuff at one time?
No.
Okay. Well, here's just a little quick video to show you how you can do this. It's a handy thing, especially if you have a whole list of stuff you want to go through. So here, check this out.
Did you know you can swipe with 2 fingers to instantly select things on the iPhone? This works anywhere you have a list view. So in the Messages app, you can swipe on a bunch of messages to toggle them between read and unread, or delete them. In the Reminders app, you can swipe with 2 fingers on a bunch of reminders to reorganize them within the list, or move them to a different section, or mark them as completed. And you can combine this with another hidden gesture. You start swiping with 2 fingers, and then with your other hand you tap on the status bar to scroll to the top. It'll instantly select everything between. And once you have them selected, you can still tap to unselect, tap to reselect, or use 2 fingers again to select more, before you decide what you want to do with them. Like in Mail, you can put different messages into a folder, flag them, delete them, or more.
Were any of you aware
I'm
you
D.
could
Griffin
do that
Jones
stuff
with
on
Cult
your
of
iPhone?
Mac.
Nope.
Okay.
Not at
Well,
all.
it's handy. And here's the thing, I will admit, I sometimes forget about these little tricks. If you don't use this stuff often, you forget. A few months ago, my wife realized she just had a ton of emails she didn't want. And she's like going click, 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 going through these. I'm like, and I showed her this, just tap with two fingers and scroll up on it, and it'll select a whole bunch of them and it saves you a lot of time. So it's a handy little trick to get to know how to use. And it can be used in a number of different apps on the iPhone. All right. Another little trick on your
Did you know
iPhone
you can swipe?
do. Are you guys aware on your lock screen, you have two little icons down at the bottom, two tools. Are you aware you can swap those out?
I think you told us that. Yeah.
So you've got two tools, and standard is flashlight and camera, but you're not stuck with those. You can swap those out to other stuff you want to be able to access on your lock screen. So here's how you do this. The first thing you want to do is you want to just press and hold on a part of the screen where there isn't anything there but background. So like on my phone, if I press somewhere on the moon or the earth there, if I tapped and held, it would work there. But don't do it like on top of the time or date or complications that you have on your phone. Once you do that and hold that, then you will, this is what it looks like. You'll see a little customize button come up at the bottom. All right. And then you want to tap, click on that customize button. Once you do that, on the bottom there, you can, your little icons for that flashlight, in this case, the flashlight of the camera, you'll see a little minus icon above them. If you want to swap them out, you press the minus button and that icon will go away and it'll be replaced by a little plus sign in the empty space. And then you are going to press the plus sign to add something new. And when you do that, what you're going to get is basically it's a panel will slide up from the bottom and you're going to have a whole plethora of buttons to choose from. By the way, this is just a screenshot from my phone, but if you do that, you can scroll. I mean, you'll scroll for a while. There's a ton of different stuff in there that you can put there. And so you just click the one you want. And when you put it in there, once you click it, it goes back to your main screen. You'll see it on there. And then you just tap done up at the top. And now you've changed your lock screen icons. And that's how you do it. And like I said, there's a ton of buttons, whatever you may need to access quickly from the lock screen, is what I would recommend having there. All right. I don't know if you guys know this, but you can actually upload your own music to Apple Music. And so I've got a little clip here showing you what this is about.
Today I'm going to show you how to add your own custom songs to the Apple Music app. Maybe you found a live concert recording or a soundtrack that isn't on Apple Music that you'd still like to listen to. All you need to do is download your music in AAC, AIFF, MP3, or WAV formats. Download them on your Mac or your PC running iTunes, and it's as simple as selecting all the files, which are probably in your downloads folder, and dragging them into the music app. If for some weird reason that doesn't work, you can also go to the music app or iTunes and then go to File, Import, and then select the music that way. Then you'll see it in the Recently Added section. Right-click on it and then click Get Info, and you can add in all of the metadata you might want to add, like the name of the album, the name of the artist, the year it came out, the genre, the number of tracks. Click OK when you're done. And if you have an image you want to use as the album artwork, you can go to the Artwork tab and just drag an image in. Here's a picture I happened to take while I was at this concert. It's not very good, but it represents the concert. I'm going to use that as the album artwork, so I just drag it in, and there you go. You'll also see that the names of the music tracks aren't correct, and you can do the same thing. Right-click on them, click Get Info, and then you can go in and add the track title along with the track number. It's a little tedious, but It could be worth it if you have a favorite concert you'd like to listen to all the time. There are a few downsides. You can't add custom music to a shared playlist, only music that exists in the Apple Music catalog. Custom music also doesn't appear in Apple Music Replay at the end of the year, so your stats like top artist, top album, and top songs for the month and year won't be accurate. Now, you can technically do this on Spotify as well, but the process isn't nearly as easy. It's one of the top reasons I stay with Apple Music.
Yeah, so
I'm Digger from
that
Jens with Cult of
is real
Mac.
handy. Like I said, like he was saying, maybe you have a, I know I've got some like bootleg concert stuff, tracks and everything, and if you want to add them, you can do that. So kind of interesting to be able to add your own stuff in there. All right. Well, obviously, we know that there is definitely going to be a new campaign shot on iPhone from this past Artemis 2 mission. As they were touting this, and whoops, there we go. And you've seen some of the shots on iPhone, but I have no doubt we will be seeing a whole campaign, a shot on iPhone stuff from this mission. And as much as we use mostly iPhones for our picture taking, they certainly don't match. And I'm sure you all have seen some of the breathtaking shots that they took with more powerful cameras, not the iPhones. And they're just some amazing shots they took. But no doubt, I am sure we're going to be seeing ads with shot on an iPhone and some of these images from the Artemis mission. All right. And there we go, guys.
Thanks, Glenn. Those were interesting.
Thanks. Well, as always, I hope you guys learn a few things and are able to put to use some of the things that I come up with.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Glenn.
Sure. One of the things that I love about doing this, I mean, as I've told the other officers, it's a lot of work. I mean, it takes me a number of hours to put these together. But one of the things that I love about doing this every month is I feel like I'm so much more on top of like Apple News or little tips and tricks and things that maybe I didn't know already. So I'm sure just by doing this, it helps me expand my own, knowledge. So hopefully, like I said, you guys get something out of them. All right, Ron, what's up next? Where are we going to go from here?
Well, you had the 25th anniversary of OS 10, right?
Yeah.
And I think the logical thing to go to is the 50th anniversary of Apple's computers. So it's like, I think it's about an 8-minute video. So let me pick it up here a second.
Okay.
Do you see this 1976?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then let's do it.
Introducing Apple easy to operate on the computer. Just hook it up to your TV and create dazzling color displays.
As you watch this, think about whether you've had or saw some of these older computers.
The most delightful conversation with some 4 and 5-year-olds. They probably know as much about the computer as I do.
When giant IBM introduces its own personal computer in 1981, the PC world is finally taken seriously.
I can do some pretty complicated mathematical graphing like moving averages and curve fitting.
You control Lisa by pointing to these images on the screen with this unique item called a mouse. It can draw a picture, or it can draw conclusions. It's a personal computer from Apple, and it's as easy to use as this. There are more Apple IIs teaching more subjects in more schools than any other computer. Apple II GS. Brilliant graphics, brilliant color, brilliance.
All the work we've shown you was done by the people in this room. on a computer.
Now with the Macintosh Portable, his office can go with him around the world. Announcing something you've never seen before in an inexpensive Macintosh. Color. You are about to witness a revolution called color. But the remarkable thing isn't just what it can do. It's what it can become. Introducing PowerBook Duo.
Newton is digital. Newton is as powerful as a computer. Newton is intelligent. Newton can receive a page and sends faxes. Powered Macintosh is here. Future is better than you expected.
Microsoft Corporation today officially unveiled its Windows 95 computer program. The cyber hype has been relentless. It's been worldwide, and it's paying off.
When you get just 28 minutes to save the entire planet, you better hope you build a rig.
It's the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world. Who do.
This is iMac. The whole thing is translucent. You can see into it. It's so cool. We've got a really great handle here. The back of this thing looks better than the front of the other guys, by the way. iBook is the name of this product.
One small step for a man and one giant leap for wireless networking.
This amazingly powerful G4 technology into this 8-inch cube, and to cool it without a fan. This amazing little device holds 1,000 songs. It goes right in my pocket. So I can move this with just a touch anywhere I want. Amazing. And the screen literally floats in midair. The new 17-inch PowerBook.
As you can see, it is the world's thinnest desktop computer, less than 2 inches thin. And everything fits together right behind the display.
You ever wonder what this pocket's for? I've always wondered that. Well, now we know, because this is the new product. The transition from the Power PC to Intel processors. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone. What we're going to do is get rid of all these buttons and just make a giant screen. I just take my finger and I scroll. We're showing you the whole New York Times website. It's the ultimate digital device. This is the new MacBook Air, and you can get a feel for how thin it is. Built into every iPod Nano is now an awesome video camera, as well as a pedometer. It comes in awesome colors that are just unimaginably beautiful. If there's going to be a third category of device, it's going to have to be better at these kinds of tasks. We call it the iPad. That's what it looks like, to see a whole web page right in front of you, and you can manipulate with your fingers. Way better than a laptop. Way better than a smartphone.
Siri is your intelligent assistant. It helps you get things done just by asking.
What is the weather like today?
Here's the forecast for today.
The only two notebooks in the industry with Retina display quality. It's powerful and super thin and light.
iOS 7. It's unbelievable. It's just gorgeous. From the typography on this lock screen with these icons, just takes advantage of every pixel on that Retina display. Your friends never look more attractive. And Game Center, we just completely ran out of green felt and wood as well. This has got to be good for the environment. The iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus.
From the glass front that curves around the side to meet seamlessly with the anodized aluminum back.
Apple Pay. We set out to make the best watch in the world.
You just raise your wrist and the notification will come in. It's amazing to have a Maps application on such a little device.
Apple Watch helps you live a better day.
A new product from Apple called Apple AirPods. A pair of AirPods near your iPhone and open the case. And you tap connect. And that's it. Across your iPads and your Macs as well.
iPhone 10
is beautiful to look at. It has glass on both the front and the back. First OLED display, great enough to be in an iPhone. Face ID. This is the future of the smartphone this year.
Biggest change since the original iPad. LCD that stretches from edge to edge, Face ID. All new A12X Bionic. Faster than 92% of all the portable PCs, Xbox One S class graphics. The new Apple Pencil attaches magnetically. This is the new Mac Pro. It is the most powerful Mac we have ever created. And it has up to 28 cores.
6K Retina display.
This is the new MacBook Air with M1.
Faster than 98% of PC laptops sold in the last year. 15 hours of wireless web browsing. Twice as long on a single charge.
M1 Pro and M1 Max, brand new MacBook Pro.
Physical keys replace the touch bar. We're adding ports to the new MacBook Pro. MagSafe is coming back.
Mac Studio is an entirely new Mac with the unbelievable performance of our most powerful Apple Silicon. And the Studio display is the perfect complement to Mac Studio. Vision Pro is a new kind of computer that augments reality by seamlessly blending the real world with the digital world. The next big step for Apple. It draws on your personal context from across your apps.
Siri will take actions inside apps, find something when you can't remember it.
AI for the rest of us. Liquid Glass. This unified design language creates a more harmonious experience as you move between products with the optical qualities of glass and a fluidity that only Apple can achieve. It transforms depending on your content, a new level of vitality to every aspect of your experience.
MacBook Neo. An amazing all-new Mac powered by A18 Flame. Everything you'd expect of a MacBook. A price you wouldn't.
I feel like I was taking a trip down memory lane of my life. Actually, I think I'm more nostalgic for some of those older computers. I'm like, man, I used to have fun with some of those things, even though they were like nothing compared to what we do today. It was like, man, I think of some fun times on those devices.
They showed an Mac LC, and that was my first computer.
They had a picture, they showed cassettes, and I'm like, man, I miss the old days when I actually remember using cassettes and a little cassette drive connected to my computer.
I never had that.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of cool though to look back on that. Some of those things, even like Apple Watch, I'm like, man, that thing's like 11 years old already.
Yeah, really.
I was kind of surprised realizing how long already it's been around. So, would that be a good jumping off point for our Mac Neo stuff? MacBook
Probably.
Neo. Okay, well, and I'm sorry that John had to go take care of his taxes, slacker. Because I know this was like something he really wanted to have a discussion about, the new MacBook Neo. And so I suggested, and we've got some videos here tonight that we're watching, and we usually don't like to do as much video as we're doing tonight, but we're kind of in a little bit of holding pattern right now in the Apple world. There's not like a ton going on right now, as we're heading toward WWDC here in a couple months. And so we thought, well, so that we're using a little more video than what we might normally do. But I found what I thought was a pretty cool video, and it's part review of the MacBook Neo, but I think it lends to an interesting discussion because the person doing this video also is really pointing out the problem that the MacBook Neo creates with the MacBook Air. And so I want to share this with you. And, I know John was really hoping to foster some discussion about the MacBook Neo after we watched this, but like I said, unfortunately he had to go. So we can talk. I'll be curious to see some thoughts on the MacBook Neo after we watch this. So let me share this with you guys. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Guy sitting there on his couch.
This is an M1 MacBook Air, the computer that I deem to be the most important of the modern era. You see, before the redesigned MacBook Pros, with which we're familiar today, and certainly before the subsequent MacBook Air that would bring with it a redesign in the same vein, the M1 MacBook Air forewent any substantive visual changes. It looked exactly the same as the Intel MacBook Air. And though COVID-related supply chain issues at the time were often blamed for the reason this was so, I didn't believe it then, and I still don't today, nor do I think that Apple kept the design the same out of laziness or lethargy. I think that Apple Silicon is an entire concept. It needed to be proven. I mean, it's easy to look back retroactively now, seeing how successful Apple Silicon has been, but when the M1 MacBook Air launched, it was the Wild West. Few knew that silicon independence from Intel would even be possible, much less that Apple would bring with it some of the most performant chips on the market for years to come. Apple had to prove themselves, and so they took their best-selling laptop, they removed the fan, and they added in this new chip. That's it. And yet this single change brought with it significantly more performance than I think anybody ever suspected, with substantially better battery life at a lower price than anybody thought was previously possible, and certainly lower in price point than its predecessor. It needed to be in this familiar form factor, a form factor that people already trusted, to prove that it could do all of that stuff, be more efficient, be more performant, be cheaper. And it did. The truth we often forget about the MacBook Air, though, is that for the vast majority of its life, it has been the de facto budget laptop. Yeah, the polycarbonate MacBooks existed through 2011, but they were more of a holdover from the mid-aughts than like a legitimate product. The MacBook Air has almost always served to cater to the low end, or at least as low of an end as Apple could reasonably target. The thing is, that low end was never very low and has become even less so in recent years. There's that famous Steve Jobs quote that Apple doesn't ship junk, and there's no better testament to that than the MacBook Air, a remarkably competent machine at a well-reasoned price, but a true budget laptop it has never been. Especially not the first model. Most people don't know or remember how rocky the ground was for the 2008 MacBook Air. I mean, everybody remembers the iconic unveil where Steve Jobs pulled it out of a manila envelope on stage. Such craftsmanship in presentation has not been matched since. Sorry, John Turnus, I love you, but you're not as good of a presenter. But what people don't remember is how heavily compromised that the machine had to be in order to be pulled out of this envelope. Nor do they remember the insanely high $1,800 price tag. I mean, it was running silicon ill-suited to the form factor that it was placed in. It wanted to be something that it couldn't afford to be in the era that it was released in. And it sold, frankly, pretty poorly as a result. It wouldn't be until the 2010 redesign that the MacBook Air would really find its footing, and a compelling reason to exist at that. But that's also around the time where, well, the MacBook Air kind of got boring. That's not a bad thing. The 11-inch MacBook Air got me through my senior year of high school and freshman year of college. It rendered out over 100 videos on this channel. It was capable and practical. But for the better part of 15 years now, that's exactly what the MacBook Air has been. Somewhat thin, somewhat light, relatively performant. And for a long time, that was the right call. The MacBook Air didn't need to be exciting because nothing else in Apple's laptop lineup made it look bad. But then the MacBook Pro got really, really good. The 2021 redesign, with its mini LED display and incredible speakers, all-day battery life, thin form factor, and a retail price that saw frequent deep discounts that no prior Intel MacBook Pro had ever experienced, really exposed how little the MacBook Air had evolved. I mean, suddenly you had this exceptional machine starting at just a few $100s more than the Air, and the Air's pitch of good enough for less money started to feel a little insubstantive, a little thin. Get it? I mean, it's not substantially lighter than the MacBook Pro. It's not substantially slimmer, yet it has a significantly worse display, worse battery, worse speakers, and it's much less performant in the silicon department. I mean, the MacBook Air is merely fine. It's absolutely suitable, but when a laptop directly above you has nothing short of exceptional performance and has for 5 years, and is soon bound to be getting even better with OLED, a touchscreen, a thinner form factor, and more, fine, it doesn't really cut it. Okay, but then Apple went and did something that was previously impossible. They released a $500 laptop. And in so doing, they stripped the Air of, I think, the one identity that it had left. The MacBook Neo it's a marvel of engineering, not because it's highly performant, it isn't, and not because it does anything earth-shattering, it doesn't. It's a marvel because the hardware is ridiculously competent at a price that Apple has never been able to target before. I mean, look, I have my reservations about 8 gigabytes of memory and the longevity of a phone chip in a laptop, concerns that I will express in my upcoming review. But the MacBook Neo is the exact embodiment of what the MacBook Air has tried and only been somewhat successful at achieving for the last 15 years. On the surface, the Neo is not exciting. I mean, it looks like a MacBook Air and feels like a MacBook Air. They weigh the same, they're about the same thickness. The display is marginally smaller, it's got a little beefier bezels. It lacks True Tone as well as an ambient light sensor, and the trackpad, while excellent, isn't haptic. It feels cheaper. But I would also argue that in many ways, the Neo feels more premium. I mean, the aggressively rounded corner radius tapering is more pleasing to me than the MacBook Air or Pro. And the bottom cover is thicker than those machines as well, sturdier than what you'll find on Apple's much more expensive laptops, particularly the way that the aluminum tapers up to smoothly blend into the color-matched rubber feet. Oh, it is just like chef's kiss in design. It's like a Johnny Ivism, even though he's gone, because I think it's John Turnus, who I think is going to be a really good CEO. This is what we're going to get. The case uses an aluminum extrusion to provide the foundation for the laptop chassis rather than the machine hour intensive processes that are used in the MacBook Pro and Air. This lowers machine costs and therefore production costs, increases throughput, and even pushes up the recyclable content percentage in the aluminum itself. And while the anodization at certain lighting angles shows tool markings that you would never see on a MacBook Pro or Air, you only notice them under deep inspection, and they are cosmetic, and nothing about the Neo's construction feels cheap. And furthermore, despite an SoC being slapped onto a PCB with no user upgradable storage or memory even from the factory because it's all on package, the Neo is a shockingly end-user repairable device, and it looks nothing like the rest of Apple's recent laptops from the inside. Everything is modular and removable with a screwdriver. The trackpad forgoes the taptic engine found in higher-end MacBooks, but the clicking trackpad it uses is still perfectly serviceable, and the engineering behind it, while simplistic, is incredibly well done. Every part that the user interfaces with can be removed and replaced, from the USB-C ports to the headphone jack, to the display, and even the keyboard itself, which for over a decade has been part of the top case assembly, unremovable and super expensive to replace. Not anymore, not so in the Neo. And it's not some heavily compromised keyboard either that offers a worse experience than what you'd find in Apple's other high-end laptops. To me, it feels to be exactly the same, sans backlight. I mean, the only piece of adhesive in the entire computer is a lightly tacked ribbon cable that runs from the trackpad over the top of the keyboard to the PCB. That's it. That's the only glue. And here's the thing. It's not just well built for the price. It's a genuinely functional computer. Yeah, it has a phone chip, okay? But that phone chip can edit 4K video. It can compile an app binary in Xcode, and I know because I've done it. It can handle web browsing and email and word processing and doing all of that stuff that normal people do without breaking a sweat. Because after all, this is a normal computer for normal people. The Neo does all of them without a fuss. Sure, the display is only 60 Hz and it's only sRGB, but it does get quite bright and with a higher resolution and pixel density than is common for budget laptops of this price range. For the vast majority of people, the Neo doesn't feel like a compromise. It just feels like a Mac. The only tangible difference between the Neo and the Air isn't really visual. It's not noticed until you're using the machine, and oftentimes, for a lot of people, not even then. And that's the beauty of even the least performant Apple silicon. Apple hasn't just created a $500 computer to hit a price target. They have waited until they can master the manufacturing necessary to hit that previously established target. One that they could have never hit if they weren't manufacturing their own silicon, if they weren't ideating their own methods for aluminum casting and extrusion and milling, if they weren't sourcing a display that they couldn't use until very recently due to cost. This is not to suggest that the Neo is a perfect computer. It's not. I don't think it is. And I don't think that it's for a lot of people, despite what other tech reviewers might be saying. But it is a reflection with the obsession that Apple has with their high-end laptops just at a price point they've never previously been able to target. The Neo knows exactly what it is and what it needs to be. It's confident, it has a clear identity, and it nails it. It is the pinnacle of Tim Cook's supply chain prowess. And no other PC laptop in its price can match its build quality, and many can't even match the performance. But the MacBook Air? Not so much. Not anymore. With the Neo beneath it and the Pro above it, the Air is stuck in the middle, and it feels increasingly purposeless. The base M5 MacBook Air starts at $1,100 now because of supply chain RAM hikes, and while the base M5 MacBook Pro, with its drastically superior display and speakers and battery and active cooling, which does yield about 20% real-world improvement despite being the same silicon, starts at $1,600, but you can regularly find it on sale for $1,399. That's just a $300 gap for a dramatically better computer. Below the Air, well, the Neo starts at $499, so you're paying more than double the Neo's price. For what exactly? A much faster chip, sure, but one that still throttles and the same fanless chassis? I think the blueprint for how Apple could fix the MacBook Air has been collecting dust in a drawer for over a decade, and it's time to take it out. This is the 12-inch MacBook. Without a doubt, the most controversial laptop that Apple has ever released, and in some ways, the most visionary. Over 11 years ago, Apple announced what USB-C was at this thing's unveiling. Listen to Phil Schiller say this, it's so funny.
The technology behind this is a brand new standard called USB-C.
USB-C showed us a future where one tiny port could handle power and data and display output all at once. It was revelatory. And then Apple went and shipped a machine with just one of these ports on it, meaning that if you wanted to charge and use something at the same time, you needed a dongle. And it brought with it the butterfly keyboard, something initially dismissed as just merely lacking key travel, but something that quickly became infamous as one of the worst keyboard designs in history, a design that Apple would continue to use for years across their entire lineup, despite the fact that their own customers loathed it, and the fact that it was plagued with so many hardware problems that they had to issue multiple recalls despite successive intra-generational changes. It was bad. This machine also wasn't practical when it came to performance either, shipping with the weak Intel Core M. Fanless, yes, and the first and only fanless Mac laptop until the M1 MacBook Air would arrive over 5 years later, but painfully slow, and something that gave other fanless laptops a bad rap. But not everything was bad about this machine. I mean, it had an absolutely phenomenal display for the era, one that frankly doesn't look that much different from the MacBook Air of today. It had incredible battery life, achieved through a mind-bogglingly complex terraced battery design that was antithetical to the MacBook Neo, not end-user replaceable, and placed with such high precision in its case that it could not reasonably be serviced without specialized equipment. But it is a machine that offered higher battery-to-body density than any laptop before it or since. A laptop that utilized both halves of the machine, top and bottom, to sandwich components together mere microns away. It launched as arguably the thinnest laptop in the world, and it still likely is today. A computer that even 11 years later feels impossible. It is much lighter than the current MacBook Air, much thinner than the current MacBook Air, thinner and lighter than the MacBook Neo. It is truly in a class of its own. This is peak Johnny Ive doing Johnny Ive things, the perfect incarnation of the wedge laptop shape, tapering down to a thinness that seems almost unreal. This is the machine that repurposed its speakers as antennas. The machine that introduced the haptic trackpad, utilizing magnets and vibration motors to click the user rather than vice versa. Born out of compromise, yes, because implementing a traditional trackpad in something this thin wasn't possible, but done so well that once you tried it, you didn't want to go back. And it is a trackpad that has been used in every single laptop since, until the MacBook Neo, which only forfeits it, presumably, because of cost. And that's the misconception that people have about the 12-inch MacBook. It was not cheap. It was not the budget MacBook. That was still the MacBook Air. The 12-inch MacBook launched at $1,200 in an era where a MacBook Air could be had for just $800. It was slower. It was less performant. It was thermally throttled. By every measurable metric, it was a worse computer than the much less expensive one. And yet, anybody who owned it loved it. I also used this computer in college, and I found it to be absolutely effortless in my backpack, something that I could put on my shoulders and forget was there. And the numbers bear it out. The MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro are closer together in thickness and weight than the 12-inch MacBook is to any existing computer in Apple's lineup, including the Neo. It's closer to an iPad. It's closer to an iPhone. Sound familiar? A laptop with a vision that outpaced the technology available to it? Too expensive, too compromised, beloved by its owners, but impossible to really recommend broadly? Oh, yeah, the 12-inch MacBook failed for the same reasons that the original 2008 MacBook Air did. The silicon wasn't ready and the price wasn't right. So, I wish and hope that the MacBook Neo gives the MacBook Air the freedom to become something more. Apple has proven with the Neo that they can build an uncompromising machine at a previously unthinkable price. They have proven with the 12-inch MacBook that they can build something that makes your jaw drop even a decade ago. So think what they could do today. And they've proven with Apple Silicon that the thermal and performance limitations that held back every ambitious thin and light computer before it is effectively gone. All three of those ingredients exist today, right now, under one roof. The MacBook Air just needs somebody at Apple to put them together, to look at this 15-year-old product line and say, this can be more than good enough. Steve Jobs pulled the original out of a manila envelope to audible gasps in the audience, and I would love to feel that way about the MacBook Air again. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay snazzy.
All right. I thought that was a fairly thought-provoking video. What did you guys think of the video?
I think it needs Adderall.
Okay. I thought it was interesting rather than just a simple review of the MacBook Neo. I liked that he points out that with the introduction of the MacBook Neo, where does that exactly leave the MacBook Air? Does anybody own a MacBook Air here, by the way?
I have bought a couple of them. Not the most recent. I think 2017 is my newest one. And it really was a pretty nice machine at the time. I actually gave it to my wife for Christmas, and then I stole it from her a couple months later. And I liked it for a long time.
MacBook Air M4
Okay.
just
And
recently.
How do you like it?
It's good.
It's lightweight. It allows 2 terabytes of storage. It has 3 holes on it, 1 for charging and 2 USB-Cs for hard drive, and then the headphone jack. The Neo has only 2 USB-Cs. One of them is not full data rate. The other one you have to use for power. The Neo is not enough computer.
In other words, the MacBook Air, you can shed some of the weight of the MacBook Pro and have a lot of power still, whereas the MacBook Neo is a low-end computer, limited 8 gig RAM and a lesser chip and limited ports.
I thought that he made an interesting case. Now, I will be the first to admit I've never owned a MacBook Air, but I felt too limited by the MacBook Air to buy one. So I've always gone MacBook Pro because I needed more than what the Air offered. But I think it is interesting with the MacBook Neo's introduction, and that was like the point he's making, is that in a lot of ways that MacBook Air is getting squeezed. They're a good computer, but like when you look at the pricing of it and you look at the pricing of what you can get into a MacBook Pro, it is kind of interesting. And I'll be the first to admit, like something like the MacBook Neo has no interest to me. My guess is there's nobody here that's rushing out to buy a MacBook Neo in this group. I may be wrong. I don't know. But, I just thought that was very interesting, is where does, with the introduction of the the MacBook Neo, and knowing that you can get into the MacBook Pro line for, not that much more expensive than a MacBook Air, where does that sort of leave the MacBook Air line? And so that's why I thought that was interesting. And a couple other interesting things I've heard in recent days. The MacBook Neo has sold so well that Apple's got a problem coming because they don't have enough of the A18 chips to make more of them. They're running out of those chips because they didn't imagine they were going to sell this many of them. And
That's
so
probably
that's
great for the schools that have been buying Chromebooks.
well, the problem there, Terry, I see is that so many schools are invested in the Chromebooks that I don't see them switching over, honestly, because it just wouldn't be worth their while now to do it. Um, but the other interesting thing with the MacBook Neo, by the way, I heard is that rumors are the next generation MacBook Neo could have up to 50% more RAM in it. So because there's been such a huge discussion of it only coming with 8 gigs of RAM. So it'll be
Yeah, I have
interesting to see.
50% 8 gig. That's 12 gig, which is still limited.
Well, yeah, but for a $500 machine, I mean, what are you expecting, Terry?
Want lightweight, 2 terabytes, and go on.
And more ports, and it don't have to be $500, but does need to be lightweight.
Sure, but they're not making that computer for you guys. Does that make sense when I say that? Like,
yeah,
you're their target market because you want something more. And
that's
so,
partly why I said that computer should be a replacement for Chromebooks.
yeah, like I said, believe me, I would take a MacBook Neo over a Chromebook any day because I think Chromebooks are pieces of crap. I mean, I've been around schools that use those things, and it's I hated having to, pick up one of my students' Chromebooks and have to deal with it. I mean, because I always had my MacBook Pro with me, but but like I said, schools are so heavily invested into Chromebooks. I really, unless they're already a Mac school, I don't see them making that switch on that. But anyway, I don't know. What does anybody else think
Yeah,
of the MacBook Pro thing?
I can see even for myself a use for that Neo in that I'm a passionate photographer. And if I go on an outing, you want to have a computer with you that you can transfer your images to. And really, if you're not processing, like with Photoshop, or you don't need a lot of processing power, but you just need storage, to transfer your images every night, and the lightest possible computer to do it. It looks to me like it could serve a purpose. 2 terabytes. Is that the storage? Is that what it was? That could be plenty.
Neo don't go to 2 terabytes, I don't think.
It's
It goes
512.
500 megabytes, gigabytes.
500 gigabytes for a Neo.
That's maximum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's I believe there's two different models. Isn't there like is it 256 and 512? Or is it 512? I don't think it doesn't go up to terabyte. It's 512.
They might,
It's probably 256 or 512 would be my guess. I'd have to look it up and be sure.
that might be one of those improvements that they could boost it to a terabyte.
Needs to be 2 terabytes. I live with 2 terabytes.
And I mean, I could see the other thing I can see it for is like I have an adult daughter who uses an iPad. Now she occasionally needs to print something off here, and she doesn't have a printer at home, so she comes over and uses our equipment. But if I gave her a little Neo and a cheap little printer, she could solve that problem. It'd be easier than printing from an iPad, I think. I don't know. I've never printed from an iPad. How about you guys?
Nope, I haven't tried it either. The thing about the Neo is I think it's even surprised Apple at how well this thing is sold. And I wish John were able to be here with us because I know when it first came out, John was like, he was real, excited and curious to see how that price point would sell. And it sold like crazy. And so I'm not even sure that Apple expected it because again, they're running out of chips to make more of them right now. and it has been a huge hit. And again, I would say we are probably not the target market for MacBook Neos. I mean, you're looking at people who, they can't necessarily spend a lot of money on a computer and they really would love to have a Mac. And, so that kind of fits the bill. Like Tammy, you're saying wanting 2 terabytes. I can't do anything less than 2 terabytes, unfortunately. So that, I've had a hard time with, what are my computer choices? Well, they've been pretty limited in the past. So I definitely we're definitely not the target market for it, but nonetheless, I think it's an interesting thing that I never thought I'd see Apple do, because Apple has always been about they stress they are a premium brand, that they don't cater to that low end, and now all of a sudden they're doing it with the MacBook Neo.
But you may did you notice that he was drifting his fingers over the base of it, recognizing it felt like a quality piece of equipment.
Yeah.
So it's not like a cheap piece of junk. It might be inexpensive, but it's not cheap.
No, and I agree, and I think that's one of the appeals is that, I, my argument is one of the reasons I always liked Apple computers is because they used good components. They were made better for the most part. We've had a few exceptions. And I think that continues with the MacBook Neo. As you pointed out, it's not a piece of junk, but it does have its limitations. I know that that's not a computer I could sit and use on a regular basis.
Yeah, the base was rugged. You made mention of that.
Yeah, and again, I think for that kind of computer, you want it something that's going to hold up if it gets banged around a little bit. You guys mentioned the possibility of being in schools. That's why Chromebooks are made. I mean, these kids throw Chromebooks around like they're nothing, but they're cheap. They're easy to replace.
It would be a good one to take on a vacation, just to give you something of a computer.
Yeah, it could be. Like I said, it would really have its limitations. And I mean, probably the first thing I would notice right away, and I let me preface this by saying I have not sat at a MacBook Neo and looked at one on, but I'm sure the display right away would be a huge difference from my MacBook Pro display.
Well, when you have people come and visit you and stay at your house and they want to use your computer, it might be a perfect substitute rather than putting them on your expensive MacBook Pro.
Well, there you go.
Right? This
Yeah,
is
I get
kind of like when you go to a hotel and they've got a computer sitting down in the lobby. You could have a little, cheap little Neo. That's what they get to use.
They must have been sell so many of them. You're fucking this reality. They're selling lots, so then there must be a market that you're not understanding.
Oh, for sure, without a doubt. And let me say this: I would rather not have to spend over $3,000 when I buy a computer. And I got to tell you, as you've heard me say before, I've got a MacBook Pro M1 Max, and this computer I bought in 21. So we're going on almost 5 years old, 4.5 years old at this point. And I really don't have any desire to upgrade it because I think this may be the best laptop I have ever owned. I mean, it's not really showing its age yet to me. And I was just curious, just the other day, I was looking at, if I were replacing this with a MacBook Pro M5, and really for what I would want in that computer and the size of the hard drive and the RAM, I can't get under $3,500. So, I mean, I don't really have a desire to go out and spend $3,500 on a computer either.
Well, I'll back that up, Glenn. I bought this, what I'm looking at right now, M4 Max 16-inch MacBook Pro. I bought it, I guess, January of a year ago, so it's about 15 months old, and it has been a game changer for me. I mean, it's been just a delight. The speed and the fact that I can actually edit Photoshop files on my laptop rather than needing a a desktop, 27-inch or whatever. I can do it successfully, and it while I'm watching television or whatever, it just has been a delight. The best product I may have ever bought, and it was expensive, but it's like those things when you look back and when you bought something like that and you paid a lot of money, but it's proven itself, you don't really feel I have no regrets.
No, and I don't either. I mean, I think I paid when I bought this in 21, I think I paid like $3,200 for it. And yeah, it's a lot of money, but on the other hand, here I am almost 5 years down the road and I'm still getting my money's worth out of it, I feel at least. So, yeah, you can justify that. By the way, everybody talks about what are Apple's greatest products they've ever made. I will go so far as to make an argument that their silicon chips may be among the best things they have ever produced. I mean, to me, they have been game changers. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I mean, that's I other than they're expensive, I don't hear anybody complaining about the computers they're buying with silicon chips in it. And I think what they have done has been, you just said it. It's been a game changer.
Well, I bought mine from Micro Center when their normal when they'll run a sale is 10% off and nobody else does that. And that at the time I bought it was 15 off. And I just said, wow, this is just too good of an opportunity. They don't come along that often. And then they'll give you 6 to 12 months to pay for it as well.
And it's interesting because you never used to see Mac products discounted at all, did you?
Well, you still don't. You still don't as a rule. He told me, the guy that's over there, his name's Charles, that I've dealt with. He said that they can't sell to schools and big company, they can't sell in volume those products, but they have some kind of contract with Apple that they have the right to sell discounted on certain models, I think it is, and so certain contract restrictions. But I can remember going to Apple and saying, "Hey, I can get this thing at Micro Center for this price," and they said, "Well, we can't do anything about it. It's at the Apple Store. They couldn't match it."
I have been seeing more and more, whether it's on Amazon or Costco or other places, little discounts where I never used to see that at all. So I think that's kind of been interesting over the last year. All right. Anybody else have anything about the Mac Neo they want to mention before we move on here? By the way, Ron and Steve, I think John will be happy that we had a discussion about this. Steve, you were going to show us something.
Yeah. Let me get set up. There it goes. This is there we go. Y'all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. All right. Yeah, this is just a quick little presentation, no big deal. It's about a handy device I bought recently and got a little background story. My wife does the grocery shopping while I wait in the car. And a couple of weeks ago, she came out to the car and said she had laid down her phone and she couldn't remember where. Bless her heart. So fortunately, someone had turned it into customer service, and laying your phone down and walking away is a really easy thing to do. So we have a friend who keeps her phone on a lanyard. So I did a little shopping, and it seemed like a good idea because sometimes you don't have a spare pocket to keep your phone in. And this is what I ended up buying. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Keiko? Cacoe. Amazon's, sorry?
Oh, you're asking to pronounce it. That's how I pronounce it, I guess.
Keiko, whatever. Amazon sells several different makes of phone lanyards, and this is a screenshot of the one that I bought. I included a link down here at the bottom to the Amazon webpage where you can go directly to it. The lanyards are inexpensive. They come in a 2-pack. one red, one black. My wife snatched up the red one. Other colors are available. There's nothing fancy about them, just simple, strong nylon straps. The lanyard has two parts, the strap and a second part called the patch. And that patch is the clever part. The patch has a small tab with a ring, and the strap has a clip that attaches to the ring. The patch was easy to install. I removed the phone from its silicone case and placed the patch at the bottom. And the tab with the ring goes through the hole for the charging cable. You can see how it hangs down there at the bottom. So you replace your phone back inside the case, and the patch is securely in place. And you can see how the clip is attached to the ring. The tab is thin enough that it does not interfere with the charging cable. The strap is adjustable, shorter for hanging it around your neck and longer for wearing it across your body. My wife keeps hers around her neck, and the strap is just long enough that she can use touchless payment. The only thing you need to be careful about is when you lean over, you might hit your phone against something like a counter. So it's wise to protect your phone with a good quality phone case, but that's a smart thing to do anyway. Here's the breakdown of the cost for a 2-pack of lanyards. We subscribe to Amazon Prime, so the shipping charge was included. $13.60 for the 2-pack, and we have used it many, many times, and we're going grocery shopping tomorrow, and I will make sure that my wife has hers. That's it.
Do you use one, Steve?
Sorry?
Do you use one yourself?
Yeah, I got the black one. Here, stop sharing. Come on.
And how well has it held up so far?
Doing fine. There's this buckle up here at the top, and you can slide it. You can see how I do this. All the way down at the bottom. And that is the maximum length. And that looks like, I think it's about 25 inches. And then you just slide it back again.
Give me the name of the brand again, please.
Cacoe.
CACOE. When Ron posts this on the Facebook page or on the GAMUG.org page, then I included a link. But this is really handy. And if you don't have a spare pocket, no, even if you do have a pocket, with your phone in your hand, you could lay it down someplace and walk off without it. And this will minimize the chances of you doing that. Let's face it, get forgetful.
I could see that coming in handy when you're traveling.
Yeah.
You know, or maybe you're like on some scenic thing where you're taking pictures and you're maybe high up and you're worried about dropping your phone or something. And if you got it on that, you don't have to worry about it.
That's an excellent point too.
I remember I was doing one of these kind of cloud walk things in Costa Rica a few years back when I was visiting my parents, and you're on these little kind of rickety bridges, and you're looking down and it's hundreds of feet down there, and I'm taking pictures, and I was like feeling so paranoid that I was going to drop my phone. So that would have been like the perfect place to have something like that around your neck.
Yeah. I was on a Ferris wheel one time. We stopped at the top and I said, oh, let's take a selfie. And then I came this close to dropping my phone.
Yeah. Yeah. So I could see that coming in handy. All right. Thanks, Steve.
Sure.
Ron, what else did we have this evening?
Something about correct use of ports.
Okay, well, let me ask
video or something.
Let me ask you guys this, because I don't want to overwhelm you guys with video. we have a video, and it's a Mac most video. And so I always think he does a good job, but it's about how people tend to not use the right ports on their Macs. And he's talking about what ports to use. Again, I don't want to clobber you guys over the head with video. And if we say, you know what, we've had enough video for tonight, and we can just kind of end things for tonight a little early, or if you guys want to watch it, we can, or we can, otherwise we can push that off to another time. What do you guys think?
How long's the video?
It is, second. I got too much stuff on my desktop. Going to find it. It is. Hold on, give me a second. It is 13 minutes long.
Why not?
You guys up for it?
That would take us to their quitting time.
Yeah. All right. I will put it on then.
I may have to bail early anyway, regardless. So thank you.
Sure.
Like came home from book club. I will find out what the literary world is about.
Do you think it'd be good to save it for when there's more guys here?
Well, that's why I thought I'd ask. I thought I came across and thought it was interesting because I don't think we often think about ports. We just plug in, where's the port? Oh, boom, there it is. And we don't give it much thought. And so I thought he had an interesting take on all of it. So, I'll let you guys vote on it. It's up to you. If we want to watch it, we can.
Let's do it.
Okay.
It's only 8:40.
Where'd it go? It's not showing up. Hold on a second. Oh, I know why it's not showing up, because when you're on Zoom and you go to share, if you hide something in your desktop, and I do that all the time, I just hit hide to get rid of something, and then it won't find it when you go to share.
Yeah, you have to have it in the desktop.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Gary with MacMost.com. Let's talk about the connection ports on your Mac. So I often hear from people that they're confused about the ports on the back of their Mac. What can they be used for, and which is the proper one to plug various devices into? Here's the back of a 2023 iMac. And you can see there are 4 small ports at the bottom left. 2 of them don't have any label at all, and 2 of them have this little lightning bolt symbol. Let's take a closer look here, and you can see how 2 are labeled and 2 aren't. Well, the 2 unlabeled ones on the left are USB ports, and the 2 with the little lightning bolts, they are Thunderbolt ports. What's the difference, and when should you use each one? First, it's important to understand something about the term USB. It refers to both the shape of the port and to the speed of the data that can move over the port. Here are the 2 types of USB connections you're probably most familiar with. There's the rectangular one that's been around for 25 years. This is actually called USB-A. Then there's the more modern USB-C port, which is smaller and has these rounded ends. Now both are called USB, but to call them their proper names, one will be USB-A and the other USB-C. But that's not the only time you hear the term USB. You'll also hear it when it comes to the speed of the port. So for instance, you may hear something is USB 3 or USB 4. This refers to the protocol, kind of like the language that the port speaks. But the practical part of that is speed. USB 4 is faster than USB 3. For instance, if you were transferring data to an external drive, a USB 4 drive would complete the transfer faster than a USB 3 drive. Now, these are the most common terms you'll hear, A and C and 3 and 4. But there are many more. There's actually USB-B, which is kind of a chunky looking square port. You'll see it commonly on the backs of printers. And speed-wise too, the original USB is actually USB 1.0, but there were faster upgrades 1.2, 2.0. Today, most USB 3 ports are actually USB 3.2, and they're actually generations of that, so Gen 1, Gen 2, and all. But always the name or letter refers to the shape of the port, whereas the number refers to the protocol or speed used by the port. But it's important to know that speeds are backwards compatible. So if you have a current Mac that says it has USB 4 ports, you can plug any previous generation of USB into it, and your Mac will be able to handle it just fine. It'll just work at the speed of that older device. By the way, if you find these videos valuable, consider joining the more than 2,000 others that support MacMost at Patreon. You get exclusive content, course discounts, and more. You can read about it at macmost.com/Patreon. What about newer iMacs? Here's the back of a 2024 iMac. It has 4 ports on the back and there's no label. So are these just USB ports? No, in fact, they're Thunderbolt ports. Apple will simply not label them if they're all Thunderbolt ports. Only if some are Thunderbolt and some are USB will it label the Thunderbolt ports as such. Here's another example. Here are the 3 Thunderbolt ports on a MacBook Pro. There's no label with them. All 3 of them are Thunderbolt. And here is a Mac Studio. On the back are 4 Thunderbolt ports, and you can see they are labeled with a little Thunderbolt above all 4. On the front are 2 more USB-C ports, but those don't have the label. They are, in fact, only USB ports. You can't plug in Thunderbolt devices to those, only the 4 on the back. And in addition to that, if you look closely to the right of the power port there, you'll see 2 older USB-A style ports, and these are also just USB. Now, you don't have to just rely on the symbols here. You can actually look at the tech specs on Apple's site for any of the Macs it sells. For instance, here's the 2024 iMac, and you can see here that the iMac comes in 2 different varieties, one with 2 ports and one with 4 ports, but all of them are Thunderbolt ports. But if we go to the tech specs for the 2023 iMac, the one with 2 labeled with Thunderbolt and 2 not, you could see it clearly shows that there are 2 Thunderbolt ports and 2 USB 3 ports. So back to that 2023 iMac, it's got 2 ports that are clearly labeled as Thunderbolt ports, and that's what they are. The 2 that aren't labeled, well, they're not Thunderbolt ports. They are just USB ports. So what can you do with these ports? Well, with USB ports, you could plug in USB devices. That's simple and straightforward. Thunderbolt ports can do a lot more though. You can plug in USB devices to Thunderbolt ports, but you could also plug in Thunderbolt devices. There are companies that make very fast drives and they work with Thunderbolt, not USB. You can also plug in DisplayPort cables. These are cables that will connect to displays. So Thunderbolt ports can handle many different types of connections. Think of these as languages. It can speak USB, Thunderbolt, and DisplayPort. In addition, with MacBooks, which have batteries, you can use the Thunderbolt port to actually provide power to your MacBook. Regular USB ports can also provide power, but the other way, out to a device. But the Thunderbolt ports on MacBooks can actually be used to power your Mac, just like the MagSafe power port can. That's important to know if you happen to be traveling, say, and you forgot your MagSafe adapter. You can just use one of the Thunderbolt ports to charge your Mac like you do with your iPhone. But notice that both Thunderbolt and USB ports use the USB-C shape. So this is a universal port shape. And this leads to a lot of confusion because if you see a port that looks like this, it could be Thunderbolt or it could just be USB. So what you really want to know is how do you use these ports on your Mac? You may have only Thunderbolt ports, but you may also have USB ports. So let's look at this in terms of priorities. If you've got a Mac Mini or a Mac Studio, you want to connect a display first. That's the most important thing. And if you have a MacBook, you may want to connect a second display in addition to the one that's part of the MacBook itself. So priority 1 is displays. These get connected to Thunderbolt ports because Thunderbolt ports, unlike USB ports, can be used for DisplayPort. Most third-party screens have a DisplayPort connection on the back. So you want to get a DisplayPort cable because that's the language that your Mac is using to talk to the screen. On the one end, you want USB-C because that's the shape of the port on your Mac. On the other end, you want to get something that matches your display. The choices are either DisplayPort or a mini DisplayPort. So check to see which one your display has. Get a DisplayPort cable that has the proper connection on each end, and you connect that to a Thunderbolt port on your Mac to hook up the display. But some displays actually have a Thunderbolt port. And if it has that, then you definitely want to take advantage of that and just get a Thunderbolt cable. It would probably be USB-C to USB-C and would have to specify that it is a Thunderbolt cable. You can't just get a USB-C cable. It has to say it's Thunderbolt compatible. So you would connect this Thunderbolt cable from Thunderbolt to Thunderbolt, And that often gets you an added advantage. For instance, on the Apple Studio display means that you can use the display as a USB hub. That's what those other USB ports are on the back. There's one Thunderbolt port. That's your input. So that goes from the Thunderbolt port on your Mac to the Thunderbolt port on the Apple Studio display. The other 3 ports there, they're just USB, and you can attach other devices like, say, hard drives to your display, and then it will connect to your computer through the display. And there are other displays that will also allow Thunderbolt connectivity and give you additional USB ports like this. In addition to that, it also supplies power to a MacBook. So you could actually connect your MacBook up to an Apple Studio display, and then you'll not only get the 3 USB ports in the back of the Studio display, but you'll also power the MacBook through it. So it'll charge the battery up while you're using the display. Now, there are some displays that have both DisplayPort and USB input. In this case, you could, with these displays, connect from Thunderbolt to DisplayPort and also from a USB port on your Mac to the USB input on the display, and then it makes the display act as a hub. You can do this. It's completely optional. You can also just ignore those USB ports on the display if you wish. Now, your second priority is Thunderbolt devices. If you happen to have a Thunderbolt only device, or a device that's faster if you connect it via Thunderbolt, like say a very fast external hard drive, then you'd want to use a Thunderbolt port for that. If you use a USB port, it either won't work, or more likely it'll work but just at USB speeds, not at Thunderbolt speeds. So after that, you've just got USB devices. It doesn't matter here whether you connect to USB or Thunderbolt ports. Naturally, if you only have Thunderbolt ports on your Mac, like the 2024 iMac, then you should connect to those Thunderbolt ports. They could be used for Thunderbolt or USB. But if it's only a USB device, use the USB port, not the Thunderbolt port. Leave Thunderbolt open for other things that require Thunderbolt or DisplayPort. An exception may be a Mac like the Mac Studio that has USB ports on the front and Thunderbolt on the back, and you really want to connect a USB device to the back of the Mac Studio. In that case, if you've got the Thunderbolt port, you can use it for USB. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with connecting a USB device to Thunderbolt. It's just that you want to give priority to Thunderbolt only devices if that's needed. I mentioned before about making sure you have a Thunderbolt cable to connect from your Mac to a Thunderbolt display. It's important to make sure you get the right cable if you want to connect Thunderbolt devices. It's not enough just to get a USB-C to USB-C cable. It has to say it's Thunderbolt compatible. And if you need Thunderbolt 4, you want to make sure it says it is Thunderbolt 4 compatible. Same for the newer Thunderbolt 5. A regular USB-C to USB-C cable is only going to work for USB-C devices and won't work for Thunderbolt devices, even though it looks the same. So I do want to talk about one other kind of port as well, and that's an HDMI port. Some Macs have an HDMI port. For instance, a Mac Pro has one, and also there's the Mac Studio's got an HDMI port. So you may think, well, HDMI, that's for connecting screens. And you may have a screen that has HDMI on it. So you may think that the best thing to do is connect HDMI to HDMI and use that for your display. But in fact, that's not usually the best way to do it. See, DisplayPort is specifically for connecting computer displays. Typically, you'll get more options on your Mac, like more resolutions you can choose from. And you may get a higher quality image if you use DisplayPort. So what you want to do when connecting a display is you want to use a Thunderbolt port with a DisplayPort cable when connecting to a DisplayPort screen. If a display is Thunderbolt, then naturally you want to use that Thunderbolt port to connect to the display using a Thunderbolt cable. So what's the HDMI for? Well, you would use HDMI if you're connecting to a display that only had HDMI. Hopefully you don't have a display like that. But one reason you might is if you're using a TV as a display, or you just want to connect to a TV, say in your living room, that's not going to have DisplayPort. TVs will have HDMI, so then you've got no choice but to use the HDMI port, use an HDMI cable, and connect your Mac to it. A very common reason to use HDMI is if you're using a projector or large screen in a classroom, meeting room, or auditorium. And in that case, the projector probably only has HDMI, and that's what that port really is for. There are other reasons to use it as well. For instance, for your video editor, you may have many displays, and you may use the HDMI to connect to a TV to preview your video to see what it looks like on a regular TV instead of a computer display while you're editing. But in general, to connect a Mac to a regular computer display, you use the Thunderbolt port, not the HDMI port. So to sum it all up, when connecting a display to your Mac, use a Thunderbolt port and either a display port or Thunderbolt cable. When connecting a Thunderbolt device, like a very fast hard drive, use the Thunderbolt port with a Thunderbolt cable. When using a USB device, you can use a USB port and a USB cable, but you can also use a Thunderbolt port and a USB cable. Hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching.
All right. I thought it was some interesting food for thought there, because I bet most of the time, if it just looks like a USB-C port, people don't really stop and think too much about it. They just plug in. So it gets a little repetitive because he said USB and Thunderbolt a lot in the video, but I thought it was kind of good food for thought to think about, depending on what you're plugging in there. So there you have it.
Before we end, I have one bonus video, and it's a kind of a forecast in the future. Maybe you've talked or seen that Apple's talking about a iPhone Fold, and this video kind of shows that. So see what you think.
Hey, Ron.
Yes.
Before you get to that, I'd just like to say I learned I have a lot there. I'm probably going to need to watch that again because, like you said, I mean, it was repetitive and a little bit confusing, but I discovered some things that I think alerted me to my own problems with my hookups. So
Oh,
I'm
cool.
glad you insisted on watching that.
Well,
But
good. I'm glad.
that'll
I'm
be
glad this
that'll
helped.
be in the recorded. We can play that again, right?
For sure.
Can I
Yeah,
make
and
a
you can
comment
find it.
about USB and Thunderbolt cables?
Sure.
I have a situation where there's two certain iPad Pros that where we got in the family, and an iPhone 15. And when I would connect those particular devices to a computer to transfer data, I've noticed that I have to have a Thunderbolt cable. If I plug in only a USB-C cable, USB-C to C, those devices won't connect. Other iOS devices, I noticed the USB-C cable is sufficient. And I was just wondering why there might be certain models of iPhone and iPad, like iPhone 15 Pro and an iPad Pro 11-inch fourth generation are seeming to need actually need a Thunderbolt cable.
I wasn't aware that they did, so I don't think I can answer that.
Just practical experience. I've noticed those particular devices need a Thunderbolt cable.
Okay.
That's good enough.
And by the way, he does point it out in the video. If you've got Thunderbolt ports, you need a Thunderbolt cable if you really want to be able to take advantage of those speeds.
Okay, well, I'm just talking about whether or not the device will connect to transfer data. If it connects, I'm okay with this speed goes at USB speed. So I'm not worrying about the speed here.
Yeah, he's traveling home on Thursday.
I thought that was the advantage of Thunderbolt was it faster. And
Yes, for an SSD you might want it, but for transferring from an iPhone or an iPad, normally a USB C to C cable is enough.
It's good.
It actually connects and works.
Well, I didn't know there was Thunderbolts 4 and 5. Good grief.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about the Thunderbolt cable I was messing with. I think is a Thunderbolt 4. So,
Yeah, in my own case, I have an LG 32-inch monitor because I didn't want to spend the money on the Apple Studio, and it has ports on it, but they're not active, and I think it must be because I'm not hooked up to a Thunderbolt
output
output because I didn't realize that you could generate power from that and power, charge your phone or whatever else. That was pretty enlightening.
About power, while noticing these particular eye devices seem to need a Thunderbolt cable, we'll try to charge from a Mac if given a USB-C cable, but it only charges and it won't connect to be able to transfer data.
Crazy.
By the way, before we turn it back over to Ron here, one thought. I want to know, can I take a MacBook Pro, plug it into an Apple display and charge my MacBook Pro? And then can I plug a device into my MacBook Pro and charge that? I want to know how many devices down the chain I can charge.
Something tells me you're going to find out in the next month.
I don't have a display, so I can't, but it would be interesting to see how many things could you chain in a row and charge. It'd be an interesting experiment. I wonder if somebody out there on YouTube has done that.
Yeah, probably.
All right, Ron. Well, sorry, we kind of hijacked you there for a minute.
But it's okay. This is only 3 minutes long.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, here we go.
This is as close as we're going to get to a first look at the iPhone Fold before it officially drops this September. And no, this isn't a dummy unit. I actually created detailed renders for you guys based on everything we know so far, so you can see what this thing might really feel like in hand. Now here's where it gets interesting, because if Apple gets this right, this won't just be another foldable, this could be the moment they quietly reset the entire category. So let's start with the design. From all the reports, Apple is aiming for a book-style fold, similar in concept to something like the Galaxy Fold, but way thinner, way cleaner, and way more Apple in execution. Closed, you're looking at around a 6.1 to 6.3 inch outer display, something that feels like a normal iPhone, not a compromise. Open it up and this is where the magic hits, a near 8-inch internal display, edge to edge, minimal crease. Yes, Apple is reportedly obsessing over reducing that fold line to almost nothing. And if my renders are even close, this thing feels less like a phone and more like holding a mini iPad that folds into your pocket. Now here's the expectation versus reality shift. You'd think Apple would just follow the trend. Bigger screen, done. But the reality is they're focusing heavily on durability. We're talking a custom hinge mechanism, possibly using liquid metal components for strength, smoother folding, and long-term reliability. Because Apple knows if this thing feels fragile, it's over. Performance is exactly where you'd expect it to be. This iPhone Fold is rumored to run on a next-gen A-series chip, likely optimized specifically for multitasking and larger display workflows. So we're not just opening apps, we're running multiple apps side by side, dragging content, maybe even getting early-stage desktop-style interactions. And this is where things escalate, because software is going to be the real game. iOS on a foldable isn't just iOS stretched out. Apple is reportedly working on a more adaptive interface, something that sits between iPhone and iPad OS, meaning better split screen, floating windows, smoother transitions when you fold and unfold. Now let's talk cameras. Don't expect Apple to hold back here. We're likely getting a dual camera system close to pro-level quality with a redesigned layout to fit the fold. But the real win? Using the main camera for selfies when the phone is folded, something Apple can execute way cleaner than anyone else. Battery is another interesting piece. Bigger body means more space, but also 2 displays to power. So expect a balance, solid all-day usage, but with heavy optimization doing most of the work behind the scenes. And here's the second hook, the part nobody's really talking about. This device isn't just about folding, it's about positioning, because once Apple enters a category, they don't chase, they redefine. So this iPhone Fold isn't trying to beat existing foldables on paper, it's trying to make them feel outdated overnight. And if these renders are even 70% accurate, that shift might happen faster than anyone expects. September, that's when we find out.
Okay. And that's just a speculation, so who exactly knows, but it might be WWDC might introduce it, so who knows?
Yeah. I just think it's interesting. Every time I see a foldable thing, I'm like, didn't we do like the whole foldable flip phone thing in the 1990s? That's always the first thing that goes through my
think
mind.
about that. That had a screen about, this big.
I'm going to say right now, I'm not interested in that kind of thing. And I maybe will be, or I maybe won't be, but I think for a foldable kind of big thing like that, because I imagine it feeling thick, Apple's going to have to wow me with it before I decide, okay, yeah, I want one of those.
Glenn, we know you always like new tech, so Who knows?
I don't like every new tech though. Like I said,
You're
the
gonna
idea right now doesn't appeal to me at all. So I'm like, that's what I'm saying. They're going to have to really wow me to like say, oh yeah, this is really something I want. Because right now it just doesn't even register on my radar that it might be something I want.
Well, I want a big phone, but I want, so I just sounds like a smaller package that would give you a bigger screen.
Yeah. But again, as Ron said, it's all speculation. So, Apple is known to throw us a major curve and then we're all like, way off on what may be coming.
Okay, everybody, all the stuff will be on the website, and I'll even put I guess the videos may be out there too. So if you want to look at just those, I'll see if I can find them.
Yeah, and Rana, I have the links to the videos on the PDF for my goodies. I will also get links. I'll tell you what, Ron, usually I send it to you right after the meeting. I'll make a PDF, but I'll add another page to it. And on the end of my goodies, I'll link the 2 videos that I had tonight. And that way, if anybody wants to see them, they can.
Okay, that sounds good.
Hey, Ron, I'm sorry I had phone tonight, but my laptop had been left totally in sleep mode for too long, too many days in a row. It took my battery all the way down. I just got to get a new one. This is the 2018, the slim one. The MacBook
Yeah.
Air.
Well, no time like a Silicon Mac, right?
Gotta go with.
Talked a lot about it.
Hey,
All right, guys.
Glenn, real quick.
Yeah.
Are you the track coach at Parkway Central?
I'm one of them. Yes.
I was curious. I'm a big track and field. I ran, and I'm a big fan. Are there any? Is the season still going? Is there any big meets coming up?
Oh, well, yeah, we're actually in the height of the season. In fact, Thursday and Friday we host at Parkway Central a pretty elite meet. So, if you're looking for some action, it'd be a good meet to come watch.
This week, huh? And is it during what's the typical hours that it runs?
Starts at 4:15 we get rolling, and it'll go to about 7:30 on Thursday night and about 8:30 or 9 on Friday night.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, well that's great. Okay, thanks.
Okay, sure, no problem.
Okay, everybody.
Talk to you guys. Have a good one.
See you.
Thanks again for all your efforts.
Thanks.